السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. يلا.
الجمعة.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. اللهم نور قلوبنا بمعرفتك واشرح صدورنا بنور كتابك وسنة نبيك واحفظنا عن زلل وخطأ في بيان مرادك. So alhamdulillah, continuing with the recap of the kitab, we completed the first section from the Messiah, which was the Kitabullah. Now we move on to the second asal, which is, or source from which we derive our ahkam, and that is the sunnah. So the sunnah, the discussion on the words will apply to sunnah as well. Right, so khas, all of those discussions, it applies to sunnah as well. However, the Quran is qat'i, meaning it is absolute. There is no doubt in it. It is not a single letter or dot even that is missing from the Quran, as it was revealed to Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. That's exactly how it was continuously passed into us as well. So the same is not true of the Sunnah, for various reasons. The Sunnah, we have to obviously check the chain of narrators to see whether it authentically reached us from Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam or not. So under Sunnah, that is the major discussion. So the discussion on the words is not repeated, but rather those things or those matters that are khas, that are particular or peculiar to the Sunnah, that is discussed. So first of all, the types of a hadith, according to the Ahnaf, as I mentioned before, there are 3 types of hadith. It's thulathi, khabar mutawatir, khabar mashhur, and khabar wahid. Right? Unlike the muhaddithun, where it's thuna'i, it's mutawatir, and khabar wahid. And khabar wahid is divided into mashhur, and gharib, and so forth. Okay. So according to the Ahnaf, it's thulathi, mutawatir, mashhur, and khabar wahid. Obviously, mutawatir has the same status as the Quran Sharif ayah, so there's no discussion there. Mashhur is where there is some, I won't say doubt, but there is some gray area or some ambiguity in the chain of narrators, either because of one of the narrators is perhaps not so, it doesn't have such a strong memory, for example, or the such like. So because of that, there is some weakness in that particular chain of narrators. And then the major discussions, obviously, with regards to Khabr al-Wahid. Khabr al-Wahid is where there is where one individual is reported from another individual, or an individual from a group, or a group from an individual. And what the numbers doesn't matter as long as it doesn't reach the amount of the mashhur. Right? So for us to practice upon the Khabr al-Wahid, there are certain conditions. First of all, the narrators. Understand? We have to know who the narrators are. Obviously, after the Sahaba. Understand? With regards to the Sahaba, some have given an opinion, have opined that obviously there are those Sahaba who are fuqaha and so forth. So their hadith will be stronger than others. And then you have a second group of narrators who are known for their memory, piety, but they don't have faqah, they're unable to extract religious rulings from the hadith and so forth. Okay? Then another condition, besides the narrators, another condition for accepting Khabr Wahid is 3 or 4, you could say, that it must not contradict any Quranic ayat or an established sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Or thirdly, it must not contradict that which is apparent, meaning something which is obvious or something which is contrary uh, contrary to what is commonly known. Okay? Because that is all signs that perhaps the hadith was not passed on authentically to us. Understand that? Right, so that was the discussion with regards to hadith. Thereafter, we go on to ijma. As we mentioned, ijma can only occur after Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and with regards to a matter that was not indicated to by Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam or the Sunnah of or the Quran. Okay? And it must have a dalil, it must have a sanad. Sanad means it must be based on some principle of Quran or some principle from the Sunnah. That then we did that there are 4 types of ijma. Ijma where all the Sahaba have agreed to something and they all voiced their approval verbally, said so. Second type is where the ijma of the Sahaba where some ruled and the others kept quiet. Ijma Sukuti also is known as. They didn't disapprove after enough time had been given to them to think over the matter and to either agree or disagree. There was silence in the midst. This was also ijma, because the Sahaba would never keep quiet in the face of something wrong, irrespective of who said it. The third ijma is the ijma of those that came after them, the tabi'in and the mujtahideen, obviously. Understand? Regarding such laws where there was no ruling from the previous generation, the Sahaba, or the tabi'in before them. And the fourth one is where there is ijma of the scholars after the Sahaba or tabi'in in a matter which they had differed on. So it was mukhtalafi in the first or second generation or the previous generations, but then all the Sahaba, all the ulama thereafter agreed or had consensus that out of the 3 different opinions or 4 different, whatever the case might be, this is the one that seems to be more correct, and everybody agreed to that. That's the fourth type of ijma. Then we also did that the status of each. First type of ijma is like a Quranic hadith. Second one is like a hadith. First type of ijma is like a Quranic ayat. The second type of ijma is like a khabr mutawatir. The third one is similar to khabr mashhur. And the fourth type of ijma is like a khabr wahid. Right? And we also mentioned, obviously, when it comes to ijma, we're not talking about every single individual in the ummah. It must be the ijma of fuqaha, people who are experts in fiqh and usul of fiqh, not even muhaddithun, unless they have expertise in usul of fiqh and fiqh. And then we did the types of ijma as well, which was a discussion that the author himself had mentioned, not generally found in other kitabs, murakkab and ghayr murakkab, and so forth. Then we go on to the last discussion, which is qiyas. Qiyas means a person applies his mind and he finds an illah, and he finds to a new masala which had not occurred previously. For example, like in our times, smoking. Does smoking, for example, break the fast or not? Right? It's not a food, not a drink, so does it break the fast or not? And then secondly, if it does break the fast, is it kafara and qada or just qada? So obviously this was not found in previous time. So then a mujtahid will apply his mind, looking into Quran, Hadith, and Ijma for a principle. Then a principle, an ayat or a hadith, in which a particular principle has been discussed, and it has some commonality with this new masala. So what we call the illah. Then there's a common illah, a common rationale found in that ayat, the hadith, or the ijma, is also found in this particular new masala. And based upon it, so because they share the same illah, they will then share the same hukam. And then we also went to discuss the validity of ijma. Must not contradict nas. It must not be there must not be already there must not exist a ruling already in Quran, Sunnah, or Ijma. Obviously, there's no need for qiyas. It must not be contrary to reason, and it cannot be khilaf, meaning that the hadith, for example, that you are deriving the ruling from must not be khilaful qiyas. For example, a person laughing in salah breaks wudu and salah. So why does it break wudu? Salah we can understand. Why does it break wudu? We don't know. That's khilaful qiyas. So you cannot use that hadith to extend the masala to anything else. You cannot use it as a basis for a ruling on any new masala thereafter. Because it's khilaful qiyas, you have to confine it to that one particular instance, and you cannot make the idea of it. And then also the illah must be according to the principle of Sharia and not be based upon lughah. Illah must be a principle from Sharia, not based upon an understanding of a particular word. Okay, lughah. And lastly, the qiyas. Okay, well, they are basically just those four, yeah. Inshallah, okay. And then you went on to give examples of each of that. Where the qiyas is contrary to nas, or it changes a ruling of the nas, or it is based on something which is contrary to reason, khilaf or qiyas, or where the qiyas was based on the ruling that was derived from the lughah, understand? And not derived from an asal of the sharia, right? Then he discussed the illah, and how do you go about extracting the illah? When will the illah be valid? When will the illah be invalid? Because obviously that's the main focal point of qiyas, is the illah. Then illah can be extracted either from the Quran itself, can be extracted from the Sunnah, or can be ascertained through ijma. Understand? And then he mentioned the two types of qiyas. We have ittihadul jins and what you call, where the illah is ittihadul no, ittihadul jins and ittihadul no. Understand? Ittihadul jins and ittihadul no, and the ruling of each. Then he also discussed some objection to qiyas and the answers to that. And he also mentioned some ways of that if somebody else, your opponent makes qiyas, how to counteract that. And obviously in the way possible, without being muta'assib, what are the ways of counteracting or counter-arguing your opponent's qiyas? So that is also mentioned as well. And then he also went on to mention some of the illahs of those ibadah that are not so, where the illah might not be so obvious, like the illah of salah, saum, zakat, hajj, and so forth. Where the illah is not as maybe apparent as it is with the other laws or the other ahkam of deen. And then that completed the Masail, in which the four Usool Sharia or Masail Sharia was discussed. Then we went on to the second part of the kitab, which is the ahkam, Fard and Wajib. What is Fard and Wajib? What's the difference between the two? Sunnah and Nafil, what's the definition? What's the difference between the two? What's the ruling of each? That is also discussed. And under definition, he discussed both the dictionary meaning as well as the Shar'i meaning. Then Azima and Ruqsa, same thing there as well, was discussed also. And that basically completed the kitab. Did I leave anything out? Anything you can think of?
I think Moulana is all.
Inshallah. Any questions? Anything you didn't understand?
No, not at the moment, Moulana. But I'm
Inshallah.
reading
Okay.
through it, so if I do come to a place where I don't understand, I'll ask Moulana, inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, so are we not carrying on with the next Usool Kitab? We're not going to continue with another Usool Kitab. We're going on to a Hidayah, you say.
Inshallah.
So it will be the same format at this time,
Inshallah.
Monday to Thursday.
Inshallah.
Inshallah. Okay, inshallah. Okay, alhamdulillah. Inshallah, it's night of Jummah. Inshallah, make a lot of salawat, make a lot of dua for yourself, for your families, for your sadida, for the Ummah especially. So now that's suffering in different parts of the world as well. Little Kaf and so forth as well, inshallah.
Inshallah.
سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته
عليكم السلام.